All right, let's dive right into this explainer. If you hear Winchester Mystery House, I bet you instantly picture a sprawling, chaotic maze built by a haunted, eccentric widow, right? Well, as we're going to see today, history is often way more complex and, honestly, way more fascinating than the spooky ghost stories we all love to tell.
So here's the big question. Was the world's most bizarre mansion built by ghosts or by a misunderstood genius? It's kind of wild, but the answer completely depends on whether you buy into the Hollywood myth or look at the actual historical reality. For decades, we've been sold this very specific, creepy narrative about Sarah Winchester and her home. Today, we're cutting through all that noise to separate fact from fiction.
First up, let's take a look at America's most haunted house. Since it opened to the public back in 1923, millions of people have just marveled at the sheer absurd scale of this place. I mean, look at these staggering numbers from her 36-year construction project. We are talking about 24,000 square feet. That includes 160 rooms, 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, and 47 fireplaces. And the price tag? When she died in 1923, she had spent a mind-boggling $5 million, which is roughly 71 million bucks today. And she did all of this without a traditional master plan, letting an original 8-room farmhouse basically swallow the entire landscape. So why on earth build such a sprawling behemoth? Well, according to popular lore, a devastated Sarah Winchester consulted a Boston psychic after suffering some truly unimaginable personal losses. And this medium supposedly told her that nonstop building out west was literally the only way to keep angry ghosts at bay. Specifically, the vengeful spirits of everyone who met their end at the hands of the Winchester rifles. You know, the very rifles that funded her massive fortune. The legend says she was warned that if the hammers ever stopped, she would die. And you can see why people think this place is basically a giant ghost trap. The home is just packed with bizarre architectural anomalies that were supposedly designed to confuse these angry spirits. We're talking rumors of her visiting a central seance room every single night, this obsessive repetition of the number 13 in windows and chandeliers, stairs that smash straight into the ceiling, and doors that open to sheer, deadly drops right down to the grounds below. It really paints a picture of absolute terrified madness, doesn't it?
The lore is actually so strong that even today, tour guides and guests report experiencing different types of hauntings. A really common one is what paranormal enthusiasts call a residual haunting. Think of it like a spiritual playback stuck on repeat, a moment from the past just looping over and over again. For instance, people frequently report seeing a ghostly groundskeeper they call Clyde. He's often spotted in a vintage worker's uniform, just eternally pushing a wheelbarrow of ash or coal around the estate. But here is where we have to execute a hard pivot, because the actual historical evidence completely derails this ghost story. The reality gives us completely logical, highly practical explanations for these so-called paranormal oddities. That famous staircase to nowhere? Yeah, it was simply the result of Sarah boarding up the top floors after they got severely damaged in the massive 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Fun fact, she actually got trapped in her room during the quake. And that infamous door that drops straight outside, it wasn't to trick ghosts at all. It was a highly practical construction entrance so workers could easily hoist heavy materials up to a higher floor using a pulley system.
All right, let's move into part 2, the real Sarah Winchester. When we take a step back and actually trace her life, we uncover a really tragic sequence of personal losses that prompted her to leave Connecticut and start over in California. She married William Winchester in 1862. Just 4 years later, they tragically lost their infant daughter, Annie. Then, in 1881, her husband William passed away from tuberculosis. Seeking a fresh start, she traveled a bit and eventually bought an 8-room California farmhouse in 1884. So this wasn't some panicked midnight flight from ghosts. It was just a grieving widow moving closer to her extended family on the West Coast to start a new chapter. But here's the kicker. Overnight, upon her husband's death, she became one of the wealthiest women in the entire country, inheriting nearly 50% of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company's shares. Her fortune was estimated to be around $20 million at the time. With that kind of unbelievable capital, she had the complete freedom to build, invest, and live exactly how she wanted, without answering to anyone. So the really crucial point here is just how starkly her reality contrasted with her public image. Look at this quote from a contemporary journalist named Merle H. Gray. It kind of gives Sarah back her voice, noting that she was actually a brilliant, cultured intellectual.
She spoke 4 languages, she was a talented musician, a massive philanthropist, and, importantly, a self-taught, highly capable architect. That is a complete 180 from the terrified, haunted eccentric you see portrayed in horror movies. And as we can see here, modern scholarship is finally shifting the narrative. Today, historians don't view her as some possessed victim of a curse. Instead, they see her as a pioneering developer who literally helped shape the region we now know as Silicon Valley. She managed immense projects, paid her workers exceedingly well, even right through economic depressions, and brought absolutely incredible engineering advancements to her property.
Which brings us to part 3, ahead of her time. Instead of a spooky madhouse, La Canada Villa, which is what she actually called it, was a high-tech marvel of its era. I mean, she installed push-button gas lighting, super early indoor plumbing and hot showers, and cutting-edge wool insulation. She even developed this proprietary drainage system for her indoor greenhouse and invented specialized laundry tubs with built-in soap trays and washboards. That invention was so unique it was actually cited in later patent litigation. She was a total innovator. So you're probably asking, why all the constant building if it wasn't for the ghosts? Well, her own letters revealed the truth. She once wrote, "I am constantly trying to make an upheaval for some reason." The non-stop construction was actually just the result of chronic indecisiveness, plus an attempt to accommodate her severe arthritis. It was not a set of directives from beyond the grave. She was basically an amateur architect with unlimited funds who just really loved experimenting with design. Those bizarre, tiny winding staircases? Not ghost traps. They were built with very short steps specifically so she could navigate them easily despite her arthritis. So, why on earth was she so severely demonized by the press? Historians point to 2 main societal factors. First up, the 1893 economic depression. To a struggling public, her immense, highly visible wealth and non-stop construction looked like villainous frivolity. Second, there was a major shifting cultural attitude against firearms at the turn of the century. As the public started to critique the massive casualties of westward expansion, Sarah just became this convenient, tangible scapegoat for the entire bloody legacy of the Winchester rifle. The ultimate takeaway here is that her immense wealth wasn't just spent on endless hallways and quirky staircases. It was poured into incredible philanthropy, perfectly exemplified by this massive donation of over $1.3 million. She gave this money to build a tuberculosis center in Connecticut in honor of her late husband. She was a deeply charitable woman, but sadly, her good deeds were almost entirely, completely overshadowed by local gossip. Now, let's wrap things up with part 4, solving a modern mystery. Even without the ghosts, the house still holds some truly fascinating historical secrets. Take her stunning art glass collection. For decades, everyone just assumed her luxurious windows were made by Tiffany's of New York, which makes sense given her East Coast roots and endless budget. But the style didn't actually match Tiffany's typical work, and since everyone who knew the truth had long passed away, caretakers were left completely baffled for over 90 years as to who actually crafted these incredible pieces. And this brilliantly illustrates how real-world historical research actually works. An architectural historian finally solved the riddle by comparing a specific daisy window design at the Winchester House to one found all the way up in Canada's Craigdarr Castle. This connection pointed directly to John Mallon's Pacific Art Glass Studio in San Francisco. And then, as if that wasn't enough, in a moment of pure serendipity in 2019, workers who were restoring a room literally found a hidden 1894 envelope inside the mansion's walls from that exact same glass company. It just completely confirmed the theory once and for all. Which brings us to our final thought. Will we continue to let sensational ghost stories overshadow the legacy of an innovative architectural genius? Ultimately, we're left to wonder just how much of history gets warped by gossip and sensationalism. Sarah Winchester was a brilliant, independent, and grieving woman who used her vast resources to build an architectural marvel, sustain the local economy, and fund vital medical facilities. So it really makes you ask, do we owe Sarah Winchester a massive historical apology? And are we finally ready to appreciate the absolute genius behind the mystery? Thanks for joining me for this explainer today, and I hope this completely changes how you view America's most misunderstood mansion.